Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today, we are going on an exploratory journey to see just how janky and busted we can make this incredibly high-end set of drums sound. We're not intentionally trying to make them sound bad. What we're actually trying to do is get away from the expectation that we have when we see a set of drums that is giving us high-end, expensive, fancy thoughts just by looking at them. There's been a surprising amount of commentary in recent videos, in some cases very, very recent videos, about the idea that anything other than purely tuned, wide-open sounds from a expensive or a high-end set of drums is the sound that they're for, and that if you muffle them, if you tune them differently, if you make them resemble a CB700 specifically, I guess, that there's something wrong with that. Where at the same time, if they're making the sound you're looking for, what's wrong with any of that? Now, before we dive into exactly what we did to the drums today, let's hear how they're sounding. When you're growing up, you see drums and you hear drums and you develop an association between what you're seeing and then how they sound, whether it was the Beatles or, something super duper modern even now. And something that is really crucial for us to remember is that an inexpensive set of drums has a great sounding range, maybe a really great sounding range, depending on the sounds that you're interested in. A super high-end set of drums can comparatively have a really narrow tuning range that is working for you specifically. It's not about how much you paid for the drums, it's about the sound that you're looking for and whether or not the drums you have in front of you are capable of generating that sound. Beyond how much you may have paid for or sought after the specific drums, the heads, the sticks, the tuning, the hoops, your particular style, how strong you are, how hard you hit, how tall you are, these all affect the behavior of everything. So looking at a set of drums and saying that they have a sound is already cutting us off from 90% of what they're capable of. Now, provided that your drum set is structurally functional, the shells are round, the hoops are level, the heads are in reasonably good condition, and you're comfortable moving them through their tuning range, there's a lot of possibilities, again, from a lower end or less expensive kit all the way up to things in the stratosphere. What we wanted to do today was take a little bit of an adventure with tuning these drums specifically in the opposite direction of what I would normally use each specific drum for, in terms of the character of the drum, not just the range, but also the behavior and character of that particular instrument. It's worth stating as well that not all of you are going to like or understand the sound choices that we're making today. And that's okay. This is about broadening our palettes. I made some choices today with this tuning that were kind of bananas for me too. And there was a reason for that. If I know what's going to happen when I move in this direction sound-wise, or when I press that pedal, it's going to lead me to play things that I've already played, and it's going to lead me to fit in as a puzzle piece into a context, rather than what I want to do today, which is I'm here by myself. I want to explore. I want to think about loops. I want to think about electronic and tribal sounds and different things that are just going to inspire me to do something different. And something as simple as having the rack tom tuned higher than the snare drum is already enough for it to screw up my idea of the melody that the kit's going to make when I move in a particular direction. Now that we've heard a little bit of this, let's talk about what we decided to do to the kit today. The most straightforward is the snare drum. It is our 70s Supraphonic. It's in a lot of the videos. It has a coated G12 batter, standard 300 reso on there, nothing special going on, except that we chose to tune it low. We chose to not muffle it except for when we're featuring the big fat snare drum with the jingles on there. And I'm also choosing to play it in a manner where I'm acting like it's not tuned in this way. I'm not trying to manage the behavior of the drum. I'm just hitting it and having fun. For the rack tom, we swapped out the normal 12 for the 10, which goes with this kit as well. We have a calf tone for the batter, and we have a coated G12 on the bottom, which right there, that's a weird choice. Thicker reso head, coated on the bottom, faux calf on the top. What if we tune it super high and imagine that it's a little hand drum like a darbuka or something? How would I integrate that into improvising some jams today? Next up for the floor tom, we brought back one of our favorites, UV EMAD batter on the floor tom, essentially turning it into a kick drum, turning it into a punchy kick drum in particular, with a clear G1 on the bottom. And lastly, since we have sort of a traditional sounding kick drum or a modern sounding kick drum in the floor tom, seemed like a fun idea to completely blow up the bass drum with a clear G1 batter, coated G1 reso, wide open, Keith Carlock nods all the way, but also some concert bass drum and some maybe world music or taiko kind of vibes as well. In addition, we also placed some wooden jingly stuff on the hi-hat at points. We used, again, a big fat snare drum with jingles just to break it up a little bit. And even though this is a special snare drum, it's vintage, it's very well known for sounding like a beautiful snare drum, that doesn't mean that you can't put something on top of it, put garbage on top of it, hit it with a broom if you want to. If it makes a sound that makes you happy, that's all that matters. One of the benefits of experimenting in this manner with mixing up the pitches and the textures and the tensions and everything is to take us out of the mindset of a drum set player with, air quotes, drum set player, and bringing us closer to the possibility of drums and percussion together, or maybe a percussion section where things are starting to become unidentifiable. A couple of examples that spring to mind for me are probably my biggest influence, which is Matt Chamberlain. Changed my life in the 90s when I started hearing him make choices on the drum set and also with auxiliary percussion for loops and also live that made me see the drum set differently. The other one big for me is Stephen Hodges. He played on a lot of Tom Waits records. Rain Dogs is my favorite. If you want to hear someone play drums, occupy the space of a drum set player, but then at the same time make you wonder what they're even using to make that sound. Like, can you buy that in a store? Probably not, actually. Then you can come back to your drum set and go, oh, I bet I can make these things do stuff like that if I horse around with them long enough. And then once I get those sounds, suddenly regular old 2 and 4 is either going to sound super different and take you off in another direction, or you're going to want to bail on that entirely and start to explore different linear things and different stuff that will hopefully elevate the music and then also inform what happens when you do go back to normal tuning. Now, if you, like us, spend a fair amount of time on social media, I'm sure that you have also seen people affecting more traditional drum sounds with effects, whether it's ring modulators, guitar stomp boxes, things in Ableton Live, whatever you might see. The important thing to take away from this today is that we could also do that with these sounds, but what you're hearing here, totally raw, again, unaffected, no messing around. These are just the same sounds that are in front of me right now. And if you go into these kind of creative spaces where the thing in front of you is the complete sound to start with, and then maybe mess with it later, rather than starting with the idea that you're going to affect your drums and then leave your drums like they are and just mess around with effects, that is valid too, but there's a lot we can do before we add on that other layer. We're actually going to dive into that in some future episodes about ways to integrate effects and kind of produce your drums in real time as you're playing. But for now, think of this as effects. Think of it as special effects, whether it's bits on the hi-hat or just a weird tuning or tuning the drums out of order. It's all in furtherance of that idea of finding something new. In my career, one of the spaces that I've occupied a lot is as a drummer / percussionist for singer-songwriter shows and bands that are built around textural playing more so than chops or volume or velocity or anything like that. A lot of the things I played today and a lot of the things that I play when I'm alone wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for every situation, and surely not for situations where you're not trying to draw attention to the drums as being sort of like on the same plane as the person out front singing. However, a lot of what I played today is also specifically stemming from times when I was in a recording studio and a songwriter or a producer asked me to go further out on a limb. Something as simple as, let's do a take where you don't hit any cymbals. I've actually had them come into the room and take the cymbals away, and so that I couldn't even accidentally do it. Not because it was going to make me have a better take, but because they just wanted to see what would happen if I was restricted. Similarly today, having a super high-tuned 10-inch rack tom is not a choice I normally make. So on the one hand, that's a restriction, and on the other hand, it's a door to walk through that ended up making me do things that I never would have done otherwise. Something that we didn't do today that is also firmly in line with this idea is going further than just tuning things differently and actually placing things out of order. Real quick memorable show that I saw involved drum set player playing drum set parts with a hand drum where his snare drum should be, and a snare drum where his floor tom would be, and a floor tom where his rack tom would be. And if you close your eyes, Jim Black, if you close your eyes, you hear this incredible cacophony of stuff that does also hit in unexpected times because he's deliberately forcing himself to choose that sound because it's not just right there. The snare's over there. He has to want that. You have to choose it. And if we always keep things where they are, and we always also keep them tuned how we're used to, we will give ourselves a very narrow lane, which we will totally crush, but it is a narrow lane. So at the end of the day, I think more lanes are better, and we just end up making more, better, and more interesting music that way. Hopefully throughout all of this, we've managed to convey that this is all about sound. And whether you have vintage, fancy, limited edition, champagne sparkle, how big it is, whoever made it, it's still just about the sound, hopefully anyway. And that means that whatever gear you're using is guaranteed to have more than one sound in it if you're just willing to take some leaps, try some things, experiment a little bit, don't be afraid to screw up. Failure is a temporary condition. And don't forget to enjoy this stuff because at the end of the day, it is music, it's supposed to be fun, and the exploration can be fun too. All right, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for being here with us. Please check out the Patreon below in addition to making sure you are subscribed to the channel so you hear about all of our content. And finally, We would really like to know about obscure tuning choices that you've made, what they made you do, and secondarily, if you just put things in weird spots as well. Anything that is taking you away from the norm and getting you excited about being creative.